Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and today we're going to be doing a set review of Paradox Rift, because Paradox Rift is coming out, and it is going to shake the format up quite a bit, in honestly a pretty positive and healthy way, because we've been basically staying within the same Scarlet and Violet on format, really since rotation. I mean, we really haven't had too big of a change in our format for a while. I mean, we've had a few new cards like Iono and Charizard EX come out, but nothing that has like completely changed the entire format. And I think Paradox Rift will probably do something hopefully similar to what we want in that. Now, obviously, there are some cards in the set that are a little sus and a little maybe problematic, but I do think there are a lot of positive cards in the set. There's a lot of playables, a lot of good cards. The set is definitely going to be a nice shake-up to the format, because we really needed something like this to come out. Again, as we've been basically living in the same format for since rotation, right? So it is nice to have something come out where hopefully we see some new game-changing stuff happen. Of course, if y'all are new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below and leave a like in the video if you're going to enjoy the set review. Of course, Paradox Rift is coming out very soon, so I'm very excited, and we're going to get into the set review here. All right, starting things off, we do obviously have the Ancient and Future cards, which is the new game mechanic. And obviously, yep, the Ancient and Future cards are very strong. Again, and the Future cards seem to be where the problematic cards are, but we'll get to them when we get to them. Starting off with the Grass Pokemon, new Masquerain here. It's got the attack Daunting Eyes for Grass Energy. Flip a coin, take it tails, for each head, shuffle an energy, attach your opponent's active Pokemon into their deck. So this could be like an annoying attack. Now, you do probably need to flip a lot of heads in order for this attack to be effective. It is kind of a cool attack, though, but there's no reflip card in the format, so Masquerain's probably just not the greatest. We do have our first EX to look at here in Froslass EX. This card has the ability Evanescent. When this Pokemon is in the active spot and is knocked out, flip a coin of heads. Your opponent takes one less prize card for that knockout. That's obviously a pretty strong ability. Froslass does usually give up 2 prizes, but with its ability, it might only give up 1 prize. It's actually pretty good. It does have the attack Frost Bullet, which for 2 waters does 140 and then a 20 damage snipe. So, I mean, the attack is like okay. It's, mid damage, 140 damage isn't strong. It does 2-shot like V-Stars and maybe some EXs, but for the most part, it's an underwhelming card. It does have a good ability, though, and I think that's where this card will lie. If you want to make a Froslass deck work, you probably could, because it's only going to give up 1 prize per knockout, potentially. Now, it's only on a coin flip, so you can get unlucky, and then obviously it can flip tails, and then you give up 2 prizes, which sometimes can lose you the game. So, not the greatest card ever, but it is one of the more gimmicky EXs within the set. We do have a new Simisage coming out, which I actually think is kind of cool. It's got the ability Monkey Trio, where if you have Simisage, Simisear, and Simipour in play, ignore all colorless energy in the attacks this Pokemon uses. Now, Simisage does have a main attack Arm Thrust Needle that does 100 damage, and then it does it for a grass and 2 colors. So it now will do this for a single grass energy when you have all the other Simis in play. And then during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage on this Pokemon by attacks from Pokemon with an ability. So it has Alolan Vulpix V-Stars attack. Now, this is actually pretty strong. I mean, abilities are very good right now. There are a lot of decks that really just use abilities. This could be really annoying to have when you're playing against Charizard, because Charizard, not only is it weak to grass, like Simisage is, but Charizard doesn't really, it has a couple Pokemon that, don't have abilities, but otherwise, nothing is really going to hit the Simisage. I mean, I guess they have the Charmeleon, but if you just have another Simisage, you just knock out the Charmeleon in return, and then the joke's on them. They can't use Radiant Zard or Pidgeot or Charizard against you, and that could be pretty good. So this could be pretty good to have against Charizard. It's going to make for a pretty fun rogue deck, because all the other Simis can also do similar things. New Crustle here, Cragbash. It is a grass and a colorless. Grass Pokemon are always nice to kind of look at, just because of, how popular Charizard is. It does 100 damage. During your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 100 less damage from evolution Pokemon, so that's cool. It does have 130 HP, so, I mean, it's not bad. I mean, 230 HP effectively is not bad, and of course, you can combine that with the new Defiance Vest tool card. So Crustle could be a fun little rogue to play, where it just ends up being super-duper bulky. We got a new Steenie, because we have a new Serena, but the new Serena is not a grass type. Interesting. Haha. What could that mean? We do have a new Orbeetle here. Now, Orbeetle's always had pretty interesting cards. It does have the attack Satellite Beam that does 30 damage times the amount of energy in your opponent's discard pile. So that's interesting. You don't usually see attacks like that. Usually it's for your discard pile. Now, obviously, there are decks that will put energy in the discard. 30 times is decent numbers, too. So, I don't know, it's a cool attack. I mean, some decks will have like 5 to 6 energy in the discard at some point in the game, and Orbeetle can hit for some pretty decent numbers. Not terrible. We do have a new Toadscool here and a new Toadscruel. This new Toadscruel could be pretty annoying to have in play when you're playing as decks that rely very heavily on superior energy retrieval, with its ability where cards in your opponent's discard pile cannot be put in their hand through the effects of trainers or abilities they use. So yeah, Toadscruel shuts off superior retrieval. And it also shuts off rescue carrier for something to note, but shut off superior retrieval basically will make this a pretty good tech card to have against something like Shenpao, which could be pretty funny. So, I mean, it's kind of an anti-Shenpao card. I don't know if Shenpao needed an anti-Shenpao card, but Toadscruel is kind of funny. It's also good against Goldengo EX too. It's another deck that'll probably use superior energy retrieval, so kind of a funny ability. I don't think it's like playable, but it is funny to have. Like, if we ever get it, I guess there is, like, actually, maybe this card is better than I thought, because actually there is a new way to play Baxcalibur Shenpao that's coming out in this set that everyone's kind of scared of. And maybe Toadscruel is actually good, because that could be a problem. Maybe. We got a new Wo-Shan here. Now, it is a single prize Wo-Shan. It does have the attack Greedy Bind, which does 140 damage, and then during your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon's attacks will cost 2 colors more. Not a bad, attack. It does require a lot of energy, and I think the best way to play it is going to probably be with Cherrim to build it up. I mean, you could play it with, Mirage Gate, I guess, but I think it's just overall better with Cherrim, obviously. So, probably, an okay deck with Cherrim, maybe Spidops to, make the attack be harder to play around, I guess. And then, of course, we have the Simisear here that goes with the Simisage. Same ability, and its attack does require a lot of energy, but will only need 1 fire, and it does a nice big 190 damage. So, nice big chunk of damage there. Maybe play Gloves or Defiance Band to hit 220 to knock out certain basic Pokemon. So, that could be decent. Kind of the hard hitter of the Simi deck. New Volcanion here, reminiscent of an old Volcanion with dual turbo, where you can choose up to 2 of your bench Pokemon, attach 1 Fire Energy from discard pile to each of them. Not the worst card ever. I mean, I don't know if we're kind of at the point where an attack like this is very good right now with how fast the format is, but it is cool to kind of have this old school Steam Siege Volcanion type card back in the game. We got some new Fuecocos and Crocodilars, but where's the Skeledirge? Whoa. We do have another EX to look at here with Armarouge EX. We do see that it does have a very cool ability where if this Pokemon has full HP, it takes 80 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. That's pretty good. I mean, effectively, this thing has, 340 HP when it's at full HP. Not bad either, and it does have the attack Scorching Bazooka, which for 2 colorless energy does 40 plus 40 more damage for each fire energy on this Pokemon. Not bad either. It is similar to Scorch VMAX's attack, except you don't put extra energy on it when you attack. It is a cool card, though, and I think it is actually pretty strong. It does obviously have some decent fire support, like Pogo Charizard, the other Armarouge, Charizard EX, stuff like that. Magma Basin. Not bad. I definitely think Armarouge EX is pretty playable. I don't think it's the best card ever, but it isn't terrible either. Armarouge is cool. We got our first future card here with Iron Moth. Now, Iron Moth does have the ability Thermal Reactor. Once you're in turn, when this Pokemon moves from the bench to the active, you can move all the fire energy you want to this Pokemon that's on your board. Unfortunately, it's not really worth it, though, because this attack Heat Ray only does 120 damage, so not really the greatest future card ever. The ability is strong, but I don't know where it'll be good. Maybe with, some kind of crazy Thornton combo, maybe? Maybe, Iron Moth, Thornton, Armarouge? Maybe, I don't know. That's, the only thing I can think of, because its attack isn't very good. We have a new Shiyu here. It does have the attack Mega Fire of Envy, which for 2 fire energy does 50 damage, and if any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from attacks during your opponent's last turn, you can do 90 more damage. So, 90 and 50 is not bad. That's 140 damage, which it's decent numbers. It is a 110 HP basic. I don't know if this is going to be worth it to play in, Armarouge, but it is a cool single-prize attacker nonetheless. And it does have an okay first attack, too. We do have a new Kingdra here to look at. This new Kingdra is actually kind of cool, too. It's got the attack Whirl Tide for just a single water energy. Reveal the top 6 cards of your deck. This attack does 60 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for each energy you find there, and then discard those energies, and then shuffle the other cards into your deck. So, obviously, it's very reminiscent of something like the Kyogre, right? The Kyogre Celebrations. For 1 energy on a stage 2. Now, the only issue is, I guess, Manaphy is going to be the only thing that can block this Pokemon. But if Manaphy's not in play, I mean, that's a lot of damage you can potentially do. That's 60 times 6 potentially. And you get to keep the cards, but discard the energy, which does mean you can combine this with Super Rod and Energy Recycler. So this will be a fun rogue deck to try out for sure. We do have a new Octillery with Suction Draw. Once you're in turn, you play this card from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon. You may draw 3 cards. Could be cool with Tinkaton, on a stage 1, that's not a bad ability. The problem is, without Scuba Net anymore, the ability just kind of gets a little bit weaker, right? There's no net to kind of like reuse the artillery when you kind of so please. We have a new Milotic, which does have the ability Lifeboat. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, during your turn, you may use the ability. Each player puts a basic Pokemon from the discard pile onto their bench. This ability is, like, okay. It is recovery, but I think my issue is your opponent also gets to put a Pokemon in play. Now, obviously, your opponent does get to choose, which means it's not like Echoing Horn where you get to choose. Now, that would have been a cool ability. So yeah, Milotic's probably not great, but at least it's another interesting Milotic. Pokemon really like to give us interesting Milotics. New Garchomp EX. This is kind of going to be one of the bigger cards in the set. Garchomp EX is a really cool new Stage 2 Pokemon here with 2 very strong attacks. It's got Hydrolander for 1 fighting, does 160 damage, and then you can attach up to 3 fight energy from your discard pile to your bench Pokemon in any way you like. Pretty good energy acceleration on fighting Pokemon, and then, of course, Sonic Dive for 2 colorless, discards 2 energy from it, and then it snipes something for 120 damage. Not a bad card at all. The big thing with the Garchomp is that its first attack is going to be really good for fighting decks. Fighting types haven't really had good energy excel for a while. I mean, there's stuff like Gutsy Pickaxe and Koraidon, but nothing as good as this, right? And we've looked at some Garchomp decks already here on the channel, and I think Garchomp's got potential. I mean, you can play it with quite a few good cards. You can play it with this new Groudon coming out. You can play it with Garchomp itself. You can play with anything that needs fighting energy, which is what makes it super strong. You can play with Urshifu VMAX, Terrakion. There are so many funny Pokemon. Lucario, Roiner's Resolve. I'm excited. The other thing with Garchomp is you can actually get into play for free with Irida. Irida gets you Rare Candy Garchomp since Garchomp is a water Pokemon. Yeah, Irida for Rare Candy Garchomp is also a pretty nasty combo. So I'm excited, man. I hope this card is good. It does have a lightning weakness, but because you play with fighting Pokemon, maybe you can try to counteract the Miraidon matchup a little bit with fighting type. So maybe that's how you beat Miraidon. I really want this card to be good, and I'm holding out hope, man. Definitely a really cool card. We have a new Palkia here with prize count. Does 80 damage, and then if you have more prize remaining than your opponent, does 80 more damage. I think it's okay. I don't think you'll play it with, like, Baxcalibur or anything, but it's, like, perfectly fine. We do have the Simipour here to go with the Simmies. Again, same ability, and its attack, Shower with Insults, does 50 damage, and then 30 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So, I mean, if you're playing this deck and your opponent doesn't bench Manaphy, this could actually be a pretty good attack to see, but otherwise, I think this is the weakest of the Simmies, because if your opponent just plays a Manaphy down, it's like, okay, this attack does, like, literally, like, nothing, almost. New Vanillux is also an interesting card to look at here. It does have the ability Frigid Room, where your opponent's Pokemon that have 40 HP or less remaining can't attack. Now, you can combine this with any spread deck. You can combine this with a card that's literally just below the Vanillux here that you can probably see. The other thing that actually Vanillux is cool at is it actually seems like a decent counter to Gardevoir EX. Now, if this is in play versus Gardevoir EX, Gardevoir is known to put their Pokemon below 40 HP. And then all of a sudden they can't attack. That could be pretty good. This could be good with, like, a bulky Pokemon, like in an Arc Pile deck with, like, Duraludon or something. Like, with a VMAX, you could even play this in, like, a bigger, EX space deck, like Charizard EX, something like that. Just any deck that makes, has an EX that Gardevoir would have to overextend and knock out. All of a sudden, Vanillux makes it so they can't do that. And that's kind of cool. It's literally like, Panic Mask or whatever, Spirit Mask, whatever it's called, on a Stage 2. And that could be good against Guardy. This could be a pretty strong card to have versus Guardy. And you can combine it with the new Serena EX here, which is a water type. Keep in mind, Irida does exist. It does have 2 attacks. It's got Icicle Soul, which is kind of the main attack. For 1 grass, you put damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon until its remaining HP is 30. So you can do this, hit your opponent's active, and then have a Vanillux in play, and then that Pokemon can't attack. And that'll be pretty cool. You can combine this with other sneaky effects, too. There is a Crobat. When it knocks something out, it takes, like, 3 prizes or something. So there's a lot of really cool combos Serena does have. And it is a bulky Stage 2 Pokemon. You can combine it with, obviously, Cheryl with that first attack. And it's got the other attack, Trop Kick, which for 2 grass does a nice, clean 180 damage. And then you heal 30 from this Pokemon, and it recovers all special conditions. So not a bad second attack. The first attack, I think, is obviously where the card's main trait lies, but it is a really cool card, and maybe, you could play it with the new Vanillux. We have another Water EX here coming up. We do have a new Gliscod. We got Power Cross. Does 20 damage for each card in your opponent's hand. Not a bad attack. I mean, Radiant Alakazam is kind of the only other card that does this, but even Radiant Alakazam, I've seen people try to use as an attacker sometimes just because it's able to do a lot of damage against decks like Lost Box and Gardevoir, where they infamously have a ginormous hand. And this could be a good, card to play in Zorobox to attack Guardy with, right? because it works for a luminous energy, right? So could be a cool card to have in something like Zorobox. And we got another Glisspod. We got a Glisspod EX. That's a lot of water EXs in this set. It does have 2 attacks. The main attack here, Swing and Skedaddle, does 170 damage for a water and a double turbo. And then you discard 1 energy from this Pokemon. If you do, switch it with one of your bench Pokemon. So I think off the bat, Glisspod EX probably will be the new best hit and run deck. The downside of the attack is it does a lot of damage, but you have to discard an energy every time you do it. So in order to make this card work, you probably have to play it with extra EXP shares. Maybe even play it with like Max Caliber. I don't know. Because you do have good walls like Mimikyu and Klefki to go into. But discarding the energy every turn is really annoying. But hopefully Glisspod's cool. I mean, you do have other Glispods in the format you can pair this with, like the new one, and I think there's another one in the format too you could pair with. But I'm excited to try Glisspod out as a hit and run deck. There is a new Wug Trio with the ability Ad Hoc Choice, where when you play it from a hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, during your turn you can search your deck for up to 3 tools and put them in your hand. Not a bad ability either. Getting up to 3 tools is nice. There are decks out there that do require tools in hand. There's a new Garbodor coming out that also, kind of synergizes nicely with this ability. And we got the new Veluza. I'm still kind of interested in this card. It's got the ability Cut for the Job, where if it's in the active spot and it's knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, move 2 water energy from this Pokemon to one of your bench Pokemon. Now, the reason why I think this is actually not a bad card, because it's actually not bad to play in the Shenpao deck. So, Shenpao is a deck that actually can play where it doesn't need to bench the Shenpao right away. And Veluza can be really good against decks like Miraidon, where you can sometimes lose the prize trade if you go with an early Shenpao and you get knocked out. Whereas with this card, you can attack with it early on with Hydro Pump that does 60 damage plus 20 for each water energy on it, and then it gets knocked out. You get to conserve 2 of the water energies, which means you don't have to waste like a retrieval or something. So I kind of like this card. I think it's playable in the Shenpao decks. New Dondozo, nothing too crazy. This card was really good at the pre-release for the record, but it's nothing too crazy. I think the other Dondozo is obviously better. Iron Bundle is another new card. Now, this card is very interesting with its ability Hyper Blower. Once your turn, if this Pokemon is on your bench, you may switch out your opponent's active Pokemon to the bench. And if you do discard this Pokemon, all cards attached. So it's basically a forceful escape rope on an ability, except you don't have to switch, your opponent does. And that's an annoying ability. I mean, decks that try to use like a wall will be very annoyed by this ability. It's not like Fion, thankfully, where Fion was like infinite loop you can put in your deck. You have to discard this card. And it's not easily recoverable as it has 100 HP, so you can't just rescue carrier for it, which is actually pretty cool that they did that. But I think the ability's fine. There are decks that will probably benefit from Hyper Blower, and I think at some point we might see Iron Bundle actually be like somewhat of a playable card. Definitely wouldn't hurt to have a couple of these just in case. New Shenpao single prize here. It's not very good. It only does 130 damage. I mean, you could play it in the Shenpao EX deck, I guess, but I don't know. It's not that great. We do have a new Mewtwo EX to look at here with the attack Photon Kinesis here, where it does 10 plus 30 more damage for each psychic energy on all of your Pokemon. Now, there is a brand new Xatu in this set that Mewtwo EX will love to be paired with, and Mewtwo can hit some pretty high numbers. So I actually like it. You can play with Gardevoir EX too, though keep in mind with Gardevoir, you're going to have to play Energy Switch or something to keep, getting energy onto your Mewtwo, but I think it's cool. It is a lightning Pokemon, so it's pretty good when you're playing against Pidgeot EX or Palkia or Lugia, so kind of cool too. Yeah, I like it. Mewtwo, decent little EX card here. Nice little beat stick. We do have a new mining to look at real quick. So with Buddy Pulse, if you have +1 play, whenever your opponent attaches energy from the hand to one of their Pokemon, put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. Now, this does mean you have to have 2, low HP Pokemon on your bench to do this ability, but the ability could be kind of annoying to play against nonetheless, right? Decks like Shenpao would not appreciate this. Yeah, cool little ability. I don't think it's like super playable. There's a Radiant Charger bug that does something kind of similar. It's only on Vs though, but yeah, it's okay. New Zebstrika, nothing too crazy there. We do have a new Galvantula that does 50 damage and 30 to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. I wish Galvantula was better. Galvantula's had some interesting cards before, but sadly this one's not very good. New Zekrom here with the attack Raging Thunder that does 130 damage and then does 4 damage to one of your bench Pokemon. I mean, yeah, it's not that great. I mean, maybe you'll play it in like a Flaffy box deck, but probably not. It's not that good. Oricorio here. Shuffle your hand in your deck, draw a card for each bench Pokemon. That's not a bad like setup attack. Could be cool in any deck that wants to set up their board, because being able to potentially draw like up to 12 cards is crazy, or 10 cards. I mean, sorry, up to 10 cards. That's nuts. We have another EX to look at here with Tapu Koko EX. Now, its main attack, Revenge Shock, does 30 damage, and if any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an attack during your opponent's last turn, does 90 more damage and paralyzes your opponent's active. So that's not bad. 120 damage and paralysis is pretty powerful. Now, the downside is I mean, paralysis isn't the greatest type right now. It's not too bad against decks like Lugia and Gardevoir, and even some decks like Charizard. Maybe combine this with like Path of the Peak, and this could be a pretty annoying attack to deal with. Now, it's only a one-time attack, though, right? Because use it, and then the next turn, obviously it won't paralyze again, so that could be an issue. But you can two-shot something with Revenge Shock into an extreme current attack that does 180 damage. This could be a nice one-up to play in Miraidon. I think that's the main, kind of draw of this card, is it's good in Miraidon. It only needs 2 energy to do that attack, which is decently cost-efficient. Like, you could literally just go Flaffy Attach, right? So, not terrible. Could be good in Miraidon. Now, here we go. The big hubbub everyone has about Paradox Rift is, of course, the brand new Iron Hands EX. This card is driving everybody crazy. People think this card is going to ruin the game. Now, this is one of the major players of the new set that will actually shake the format up. Like I said earlier, the set has a lot of new decks and cards that are going to make the format a lot different. And Iron Hands is the best card in the set that does this. Now, I personally don't think this card is as bad as everybody's making it out to be. I do think that it is very strong, and I do think it will have an impact on decks that this card kind of is a problem for. I don't think it's the worst card ever. Now, it does have the attack amp you very much, so it does 120 damage, and if your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out by damage from this attack, you take an extra prize card, meaning that if you knock out a single prizer, you get 2 prize cards for doing so. Iron Hands is a lighting Pokemon, meaning that you can play it with Miraidon and Electric Generator and Flaffy, and it also has 230 HP, and it's super tanky. It's even got some extra support with other future cards in the format, like a new tool that gives it a free retreat and lets it do 20 more damage. So this is a pretty deadly card. The other thing that makes Iron Hands scary is its typing. Being able to hit for weakness against Pidgeot, Squawkabilly, and Lumineon V means you can take 3 prizes for KOing them. Now, this card is driving everybody crazy, like I said earlier. Now, the main way people are playing it right now is with Baxcalibur and Shenpao. Actually, super similar to Black Kyurem EX, which was an old deck from back in the day that kind of played similar, where you use Lightning and Water Energy and a Rain Dance attacker. There's a new Earthen Vessel item card that lets you discard a card from your hand and then get 2 basic energy out of your deck, which is another way people are going to be playing, Iron Hands, is you can use it in Baxcalibur to grab your Lightning Energy and your Water Energy a little bit easier with Earthen Vessel. I've even seen Iron Hands in Lugia, because you can use Earthen Vessel to just grab a Lightning Energy, and Earthen Vessel also gives you, like, extra Archeops discard fodder, so this card is very good. I do think that it is nice that it does need a lot of energy. Maybe they should have made it like Lightning Colorless, but Lightning Colorless is still a lot of energy. You do have to work hard to build this up. Like in Miraidon, for example, you probably got to get a lucky double energy generator to build it up. So I don't think this card is super easy to get going, as long as we kind of adjust to this card and, play some kind of countermeasure to it, like a good attacker that can easily kill it in return. It won't be that bad, in my opinion anyways. Now, the big thing this card is good at is knocking out decks like Lost Box. Being able to KO Comfeys and Sableyes and Cramorants and taking 2 prizes for doing so makes it super easy to beat Lost Box. And, I mean, you know what? I don't like Lost Box. I think Lost Box is bad for the game, even though we do have another card in the format that might actually, hurt Lost Box a little bit, which we'll look at, obviously, very soon. I'm all for this card, in my opinion. I'm fine with Iron Hand stomping Lost Box's Reign of Terror. It is good against Gardevoir, too. That's the other big deck people think will be hurt, is Gardevoir, because obviously Iron Hands will take an extra prize for, like, killing Shining Arcana or something, or, like, a Ralts, or the Mew, or the Manaphy, whatever the case may be. So, definitely an interesting card. I don't know how good it really is. Again, it does need a lot of energy to attack, and that's going to be one of the main things that holds the hands back, is how much energy it needs to attack. Let me know in the comments below, are you scared of Iron Hands? Do you think this card is going to be bad for the game, or do you think it's good for the game? I do think this card will make an impact on the format right away. It definitely will, in my opinion, slow down the success rate of decks like Gardevoir and Lost Box, and that's fine in my opinion. In my opinion, it is. But let me know what you think of Iron Hands down below. We do have the new Xatu to look at. Another really cool card with its ability where once you're in turn, you can attach a basic Psychic Energy from your hand to one of your bench Pokemon. And if you do, you get to draw 2 cards. Not a bad ability. It's Shadow Rider VMAX on a 1-prizer and non-Rule Box Pokemon, which is relevant because Xatu is not shut off by Path of the Peak. There's a lot of cards you can play Xatu with. I think the main one people want to focus on is the new Mewtwo EX we looked at earlier. But there's other Pokemon you can play with too, obviously. It's not specifically Psychic Pokemon like Shadow Rider is. New Latios here, just 180 damage. I don't see this card being good. I mean, maybe you could play with Xatu or Gardevoir EX, maybe. Maybe. And then we know Deoxys, another like interesting psychic attacker with Genome Spiral, doing 120, moving all energy from this Pokemon to your bench Pokemon any way like. Again, nothing too crazy in my opinion. I think Latios is probably the better card to play overall. New Cofagrigus EX. This is an interesting card for sure. It's got the ability Gold Coffin. When it gets knocked out by damage from your opponent's attack, you can search deck for a card and put it into your hand. So, really cool ability to grab any card you want. That's obviously really powerful. And then it's got the attack Hollow Hands that does 110 damage. You put 5 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon in any way you like. Not a bad attack either. 110 damage isn't great, but 5 damage counters on the bench can be pretty annoying. Cofagrigus actually does get around to the brand new Jirachi, which is relevant. This card could also be pretty good to have against Lost Box. It's basically Dragapult VMAX, but a little bit weaker. But it does have a good ability. It's a Stage 1, Valsum Yamask. I like it. I think Cofagrigus is a really cool card. We haven't really seen a playable Cofagrigus in quite some time, so I'm open for this card to come out. New Gourgeist here with Startling Pumpkin, where if it gets knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, discard 2 random cards from their hand. And that could be annoying. Combine that with Roxanne or Iono or Judge Spam, and there's obviously a tool in the format that also lets you discard a card from their hand. You can potentially discard up to 3 cards from their hand after getting KO'd. That could be pretty deadly for sure. We got new Asrafa. This was very good in the pre-release, but it does have the ability Stance when you evolve it. During your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage and effects of attacks done this Pokemon. And then if you have Tulip in the discard, you can do 140 damage. Not the worst card ever. I think it's like a fine kind of like single prize rogue deck. You can't reuse the ability twice, but it does do 140 twice. So at least it's going to be like doing 280 over the course of 2 turns, which could be relevant numbers. Maybe it's not that bad. Obviously, Rope and Boss play around it, but that's fine. New Tinkaton to look at here. Kind of a weak link compared to the other Tinkatons we have. It does have Alloy Hammer, which it has a metal energy on it, does 180 damage in total. 180 for 1 energy isn't bad. I think there's just other better Tinkatons overall to play, though, if you're going to play Tinkaton EX anyways, right? So, Screamtail is a new ancient card, and this card is looking pretty good to play in Gardevoir EX with the ability, or the attack, sorry, Roaring Scream, which does 20 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So if you just load up damage on it with Gardevoir EX's ability, this card is going to be doing a lot of damage to the bench, and you can knock something out and snipe it. Gardevoir did have, Cresselia, or does, sorry, have Cresselia as its sniper, but Screamtail could be another new sniper you could play in the deck. I don't think it's great. If you're playing against Guardy, I'll just bench Manaphy, right? And it's like, okay, Screamtail doesn't do that. So I don't know. I don't think this card is great in Gardevoir. Maybe not right away. It really depends on if people are going to respect Manaphy or not. I guess it could be good against decks that don't play Manaphy, like Miraidon or something. Or any, like, Lugia deck, I guess it might actually be good. I guess it's better than Cresselia in that regards for, like, Lugia and stuff. Okay, maybe this card's actually better for that. Because, like, I'm thinking it's like, okay, I'm just going to bench Manaphy if I see a Screamtail. But it might be okay against decks that don't play Manaphy usually. All right, we got a new Iron Valiant EX. Another card people think is kind of OP. It's got the ability Tachyon Bits. Once you're in turn, when this Pokemon moves from your bench to the active spot, put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Now, this ability is insane, because if you spam Iron Valiants in 1 turn, you can knock out low HP basics. If your opponent opens up with a Comfey, a Celebration's Mew, a Bidoof, a Charmander, a Pidgey, a Frigibax, any of those cards, right? You can just spam Iron Valiant and knock it out, or you can set up a Yoga Loop turn on that Pokemon on your first turn of the game. I've seen some pretty wacky Iron Valiant lists already, and this card is looking at pretty darn deadly. Is it as bad as Iron Hands? Probably not, but I do think that it is kind of annoying that, you can immediately just lose the game because you open up with a single low HP basic, and then Iron Valiant just donks you. I think that is a little cheesy, but I don't think this card is, like, fantastic or, like, amazing or anything, but it definitely will make for a pretty interesting turn 1 combo-based deck. We do have a new Onix, nothing too crazy. We got a new Gliscor, nothing too crazy either. New Groudon. Now, this actually looks pretty good with Garchomp EX. So it's got the attack Magma Purge for 2 fighting and a Colorless. Does 60 damage. Discard up to 4 energy from your Pokemon, doing 60 damage for each card discarded in this way. Discard 4 energy, and you're going to do 240 damage. Not bad numbers. And you're a fighting type, so you do get to hit Iron Hands for weakness. Now, you could play this in Garchomp EX as a nice, kind of late game closer. So that's kind of the home I think Groudon will find if Garchomp sees play. They might play a one of Groudon EX. Got the Gible and Gabite to go with the Garchomp. We got a new Menshao here with Whip Expert, where if you attach a tool from hand to this Pokemon during this turn, you do 70 more damage. So this could be like okay against Iron Hands, I guess, but it's probably nothing too crazy. Keep your eye on the fighting Pokemon we have in the format if Iron Hands takes off, for the record. That's what I'm saying. New Hoopa EX here. It is a Terra Pokemon. It does have the attack Energy Crush that does 50 damage for each energy attached to all your opponent's Pokemon in play. This actually could be decent to have in Dark decks. Now, you can't Dark Patch to it, but you could play Energy Switch, which could be the way to build it up. Energy Crush is nice to have against Iron Hands. Maybe, like, if you're playing some kind of Dark deck, maybe you play the Hoopa EX to counter Iron Hands, right? That could be the home for Hoopa EX. So that's, like, the main purpose I can see Hoopa have. I mean, it's not a bad attack. I mean, against decks that put a lot of energy in play, this could do some damage, obviously. So, it could be good. It's good type coverage to have for Dark decks, right? You just have to play Energy Switch or something to, like, build it up efficiently. New Minior here. Flying Meteor. Once your turn, if this Pokemon is on your bench, when you attach an energy card from hand to this Pokemon, switch it with your active Pokemon. So, I mean, it's an okay attack. It does have the attack Gravity Tackle that is 20 damage. For each cost energy in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. Now, that could be pretty strong against Iron Hands if they don't have that tool on it, which we'll get to soon. It's like a perfectly fine card. Again, keep your eye on any fighting Pokemon that exist right now, just saying. Toxtricity X is another interesting new fighting Pokemon. Now, it is requiring lightning energy, but what you can do is you can either use Flaffy to build it up, or you can use Electric Generator on the Toxel before you evolve the Toxtricity. It's got 2 attacks, Knocking Hammer does 70 damage, and then discard the top card of your opponent's deck. Not bad. And then you got Gaia Punk that does 270 damage, discard 3 lightning energy from your Pokemon in play. Not a bad attack either. Again, combine that with Generator or Flaffy, and you can do some pretty big damage. I actually kind of like this card. I think it is actually not that bad. It does good numbers. It's got good typing. It has good energy attack costs, right? It ain't bad at all. I actually like Toxtricity X. I think it's better than people might give it credit for. We do have a new Garganacl here with the ability Energy Rock Salt. Once your turn, when you attach a basic fire energy from a discard pile to your Pokemon, you can heal 30 from it. Maybe you can play this with a new Groudon or something. It's okay. I think it'll get better when the Garganacl EX comes out, whenever that'll be. But for now, I think it's just kind of mid. New Cloth is interesting, especially against Iron Hands. So it's got the attack Hysterical Scissors that does 30 damage for a double turbo, and if this Pokemon is affected by a special condition, it does 160 more damage. So you can do 190 for a double turbo. Now, obviously against Iron Hands, if you can put a special condition on this with Spicy Curry or something, you can just knock Iron Hands out in return with a double turbo. And that's what makes this card kind of interesting against Iron Hands. This could be the big Iron Hands counter we've all been waiting for, folks. It's here. Cloth is here to save the format. New Flamigo is also interesting against Iron Hands with Combat Beak, doing 20 damage plus 20 more damage for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Against Iron Hands, if they have their bench full, like, you know, against Miraidon or something, you can KO them in return with Combat Beak. We got a new Slitherwing here with the attack Burning Turbulence, where you can do 120 damage for 2 fighting energy, and then does 90 damage to yourself, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now burned. So you're technically doing 140 damage. I think burn does 20. For 2 energy, it's not bad. Again, against Iron Hands, it's not terrible. First attack Stomp Off discards the top card of their deck, which maybe there's some niche uses for that. Not bad. Now, Slitherwing could be good with Sandy Shocks EX. Now, Sandy Shocks EX is kind of similar to the Galarian Moltres V. It's got the ability Magnetic Attraction. The ability can only be used once your turn if your opponent has 4 or fewer prizes remaining. Attach a basic fire energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon. Again, like Galarian Moltres, you get energy and non for free. It's got the attack Ground Spark that is 200 damage, and then during your this Pokemon can't attack during your next turn. So 200 damage is fine damage, good ability. There are other ancient cards you can pair this with. There is, of course, Sada's Vitality, and there's also a new tool that can give it plus 60 HP, so it can go up to 280 HP. And of course, being a fighting Pokemon does give it a pretty nice type right now against Iron Hands EX. Not a bad card. It's got some pretty good support and energy acceleration. And I think it'll be pretty good with Slitherwing. I think that'll be kind of the main combo deck right there. New Tinglu's kind of cool. I think it's the strongest of the Pokemon we've seen so far that are basics, like Wo-Shin and Shiyu and stuff. It's got the attack Proud Impact, does 220 damage. If this Pokemon has 4 more damage on it, this attack does nothing. Could be a good one-of to play in Garchomp EX because it can do a ton of damage for 3 energy. Relevant numbers too, 220, right? So, New Crobat here is interesting. Keep in mind there are other Crobats in the format you can combine this with. With the attack, Mad Echo for a double turbo, double colors does 50 damage, and then choose items or supporter cards. During your opponent's next turn, they cannot play that type of trainer card. So being able to block supporters could be strong, especially blocking Boss and Colress and Iono, and blocking items also is pretty good. The downside with Crobat, it is a stage 2. You have to get Rare Candy Crobat going as soon as possible to make this work. And if you're able to do that, you know what, this card actually could be pretty powerful. So, I don't know. I'm interested to see what this card will do when it comes out. Because being able to, like, shot off Rare Candy, like, if you go first, get your 2 Crobat, shot off Rare Candy, it's looking pretty darn good. New Absol here, nothing too crazy. We have a new Liepard here. It does have a Dishonest Swap, move all damage counters from one of your bench Pokemon to your opponent's active. Very similar to a Altaria that we have in the format that does need a double turbo to do this, as opposed to a single Dark Energy. So, a little bit of a thing to take note of there, obviously. New Garbodor is interesting. It's got the attack Chuck. Now, this actually will be good with that Wugtrio we looked at earlier. And it's a dark Pokemon, relevant typing. Chuck does 50 damage. Discard any number of tools from your hand, does 50 damage for each card discarded in this way. Keep in mind, you can play this with Snorlax and Leftovers, which is a free 200 damage every single turn. And then you just got to use other tools, and then you can start one-shine stuff. I actually like this Garbodor. I think it's pretty strong. It's very similar to a Maractus we looked at. Actually, I did a video on this Maractus like last week, and it's a very similar attack. It does relevant damage for 1 energy, too. It's not super cost-efficient, which is nice. You just have to evolve it from Trubbish, basically. New Yveltal isn't anything too crazy either, unfortunately. Yeah, nothing crazy there to write home about. New Thievel's got an interesting ability here. Once you're in turn, when you play this card from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may look at your opponent's hand, choose 2 energies you find there, and have your opponent shuffle them into the deck. So that could be an annoying ability to play against, especially with Grabber and Judge, where you can make your opponent have like a 1-card hand all of a sudden. But again, you can only use it when you evolve it, and again, without net in the format, might be a little too slow. New Morpeko's got the ability Hungry Dash. Wherever it has the energy on it, it's got a 0 retreat cost, and you got Energy Wheel, which is the same thing as the Articuno from Team Up. You just don't have the ability where you can prevent your opponent from bossing you up on the bench, and that's the downside of Morpeko. But it's not a bad first attack to have 70 damage, and you can move 2 energy. Could be good with, like, Arbok EX or something, right? We got new low kicks here. I actually like this card. It's got the attack Punishing Kick for 2 dark energy. Does 10 plus 40 more damage for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. So if your opponent, takes a lot of damage, this can easily one-shot something. It actually does a lot of damage for the damage counters that'll be on it. 40 plus is kind of insane, to be honest. I definitely think low kicks is strong. It does work with Dark Patch and stuff, so pretty easy way to build it up. You just got to find a way to spread damage and get damage set up, and low kicks could actually be pretty powerful. New Brute Bonnet here. As an ancient card. It's got the ability Toxic Powder. Once you're in turn and this Pokemon has an ancient booster energy capsule attached, you may make both active Pokemon poisoned. Not a bad ability. And then, of course, Rampaging Hammer does 120 damage. So the ability's not bad. You do have to have a specific tool on it to make it work, but it's definitely not a bad ability by any means. We have a new EX here. The big ancient EX to look at is, of course, the brand new Roaring Moon EX here with 2 very powerful attacks. It's got Frenzied Gouging, which does the effect where you knock your opponent's active Pokemon out. If you knock them out in this way, you gotta take 200 damage. So thankfully, you don't knock yourself out. You still have 30 HP remaining. You can play the new Tool card to give it plus 60 HP to make it a little bit more tankier after you do the attack. Or if you don't want to, immediately kill your opponent's active, you can do Calamity Storm. That does 100 damage. You may discard a Stadium in play, and if you do 120 more damage. So nice 220 damage hit. Very powerful card in my opinion. You're either going to knock out the active or you're going to do a ton of damage with Calamity Storm to knock out a basic Pokemon. Now, I think this card's actually pretty powerful. It does work with Dark Patch. Keep in mind, you can synergize it with Dark Energy and stuff. So I think it's a pretty strong card. I'm excited for Roaring Moon to come out. I don't think it's the greatest card ever, but I do think it's a pretty cool EX and will make for a pretty cool deck to have in the format. Again, being able to either knock your opponent's active out, like against like big bulky Pokemon like Charizard EX, it's pretty deadly. And then that you can also just knock out your opponent's active Pokemon. And with the ancient support it has with Seda and Dark Patch, not too hard to build up in a single turn, in my opinion. New Steelix is kind of cool. I kind of glanced over this card at first, but it's actually not bad. It's got the attack Earthquake, does 130 damage for Metal Energy, and then you do 30 damage to each of your bench Pokemon. Now, why do you want to do that? Well, that's because you can find this with Dodrio. That's pretty sick. Dodrio Steelix could actually be a pretty legit single prize deck. I'm actually really excited for that deck to be a thing because 30 damage is a lot of damage. A lot of these Earthquakers usually do 20 to 10 damage. 30 damage puts on a lot of damage. Plus, combine that with Dodrio's ability to draw a card and put a damage on it. You got yourself a pretty cool combo there. I'm definitely excited for that Steelix deck. And it's also like a tanky one prizer. 180 HP is a lot of health to have. Now, here's another anti-Lost Box card, but in a good way. It's Jirachi. It's got the ability Stellar Veil. Attacks from your opponent's basic Pokemon. Can't put damage counters on your bench Pokemon. So basically, you block Sableye from damaging your bench. Now, the problem with Jirachi is then you probably have to play Mana Thief so that they can't Greninja you. You know, then Greninja your Jirachi. I do think Jirachi's ability is very good. And I am very happy that Pokemon printed a counter to Sableye. Despite Iron Hands also being a bit of a counter to Sableye, I think Jirachi is healthy to have. Now, if you're playing a single price deck like Zoro Box or something, or United Wings, slap a Jirachi in your deck, and all of a sudden, you're not really that scared of Lost Box anymore. Very happy to see this card come out. I think it's great for the game. Again, this is one of the ways the format changes in a good way because of how good Jirachi really is for the game, in my opinion. We do have a new Ferrothorn here. Nothing too crazy. New Durant's kind of cool. You can also play this with the new Steelix, by the way. It's got Swarming Rage for a double turbo energy. It does 20 damage for each damage counter on all of your Durant. So put a bunch of Durant in play, use Steelix's attack, and then Swarming Rage is going to do a buttload of damage. So I actually kind of like that as a combo deck. Definitely seems like Steelix Durant could be a pretty fun deck to try out if it's not going to be Steelix Dodrio. New Aegislash here. There's a lot of Doublades. Jeez, what the heck? New Aegislash is actually pretty interesting. It's got the ability Mysterious Shield, where prevent all damage on this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's EXs and V Pokemon. Being able to be immune to EXs and Vs, obviously, is really strong. It's a bit bulkier than something like Mimikyu, where it does have 150 HP. It does also have a decent attack with Hard Bashing. That does 120 damage, and then this attack's damage isn't affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. Not a bad attack. It is a stage 2, but it does remind me of the old Decidueye from Dark Side Blades. You can also, by the way, play this with Aegislash EX, which is also coming out in this set, with the attack Peerless Edge that does 70 damage for each prize card you've taken, or you can do Double Edge Slash that does 220 damage and then 30 damage to yourself. Not a bad EX card either to combine with Aegislash. The nice thing about Aegislash is that decks right now don't really play counters to, you know, Vs and EXs as often. Like Charizard, for example, really only has Radiant Zard and Charmeleon. You deal with those two cards, they probably ain't hitting you for much damage because you're going to out-trade any, like, basic they try to hit you with like, Charmander or Pidgey or something. So I'm excited to try out Aegislash. I think it's actually going to be a pretty decent single-price deck. New Zacian here. Nothing too crazy for that. New Skeletors EX. So we did see the Fuecoco earlier, and this is why. There's a new Skeletors, but it is a metal Pokemon. It's got a really cool ability, Incendiary Song. Once during your turn, you may discard a Fire Energy from your hand in order to use this ability. During this turn, your Pokemon's attacks do 60 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. That is ridiculous. You can combine this with anything, basically. Like, the big options I see are the other Skeletors from Scarlet and Violet. There's Greedent VMAX, which can take an extra prize for killing something, and with the extra damage boost, it's going to do that a lot of the time. And then there's also Charizard EX, or Radiant Charizard, that you can also combine this card with. I think this card is actually really cool. I'm excited to give it a whirl. It's definitely a very, very strong ability to have, and that extra damage could be pretty crazy in a lot of scenarios. New Orthworm here. It's got a unique attack, Sudden Rush, 90 damage. If there's 3 or less cards in your deck, you could do 150 more damage. Maybe play this with, like, Gardevoir Kirlia. Another really powerful new EX coming out is, of course, the new Goldango EX with the ability of Coin Bonus, where once during your turn, you may draw a card. If it's in the active, draw 2 cards. This is going to be a good ability because of the attack, Mega Rain. That does 50 damage for a single Metal Energy. Discard any number of basic energy from your hand. This attack does 50 damage for each card discarded in this way. Play this with, of course, Superior Energy Retrieval, the new Earthen Vessel, Letter of Encouragement, whatever draw cards you want to play, Eldegoss. Get energy in your hand, do a bunch of damage for 1 energy. Very powerful card. I think Goldango is going to be a really fun new deck to try out. It is going to be the free deck on live also, for the record, so it's going to be very accessible to get. Another new EX here is Altaria EX. This set has a ton of EXs if you haven't already noticed. Altaria's got the ability Humming Heal. Once you're in turn, you may heal 20 damage from each of your Pokemon. Not a bad ability. And then you got the attack Light Pulse. That does 140 damage. And then during your opponent's next turn, prevent all effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon on this Pokemon. Not damage, just effects. So you do get to shut off like Lost Mind and Star Requiem from affecting you. I think this card is better off with its ability. You could play it in Regidrago V-Star if you want. But I feel like at that point, they'll just, like, Lost Impact your Regidrago if you're trying to stop Star Requiem. New Tatsugiri is kind of unique. It's got Survival Strategy for a double turbo. Search deck for up to 2 cards, put them in your hand, and then you can switch this Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. So you go into something like Mimikyu or Klefki, and you get any 2 cards you want. If your opponent does not Iono you, you get to keep those 2 cards. Could be good in setup decks, in my opinion. Just saying, like a Stage 2 deck. Maybe you could play something like Tatsugiri. This new Porygon Z is really cool. It's got the ability Bug Turbo. Once during your turn, you may flip a coin of heads, choose up to 4 basic energy from discard pile, and attach them to this Pokemon. If tails, discard 1 energy from it. So if you get lucky, you can put a ton of energy on Porygon Z for its main attack, energy attack, that does 4 damage for each energy on it. You got to get a little lucky to get energy on it, but if you can get a lot of energy on it, this card can do a lot of damage. A bit of a riskier ability, though, obviously. New Ambipom here, nothing crazy. It's got Hand Fling, does 20 damage for each card in your hand. It's kind of cute. New Miltank here, nothing too strong either. It does decent damage, but it's like all those Pokemon. It doesn't hit for like a relevant weakness. Got a new Exploud here. Discard your opponent's active Pokemon. All cards attached to it. If this Pokemon did not evolve from Loudred this turn, you can't do it. So if you evolve from Loudred, you're able to discard your opponent's active. That could be pretty annoying, obviously. You don't take any prizes, though, so it's probably not too good. New Spinda's also got an interesting ability where if it is confused and receives damage from an attack, you flip a coin of heads, you can prevent that damage done to it. So, interesting ability. Could be annoying to play against. The downside of confusing yourself is that you have to flip to attack, and if you flip tails, you will take damage. And Spinda's not the strongest attacker ever. Another new EX here. We got a new Maushold EX. Like I said, a ton of EXs in this set. It's got a really cool ability with Solidarity, where if this Pokemon is in the active spot and it's damaged by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, put 3 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon for each Tandemaus and Maushold in play, including the EX. So if your board is just mouses, this thing is going to make your opponent take a ton of damage for attacking it, which I think is actually kind of insane. And then, of course, you got Nom Nom Incisors, which for a double turbo does 120 damage, and then you get to draw 2 cards. There's a lot of other good Tandemaus in the format that you can combine this with. Making for a pretty fun EX deck. I'm excited to play Maushold. I don't think it's going to be like fantastic or great, but it's really cool. It's got a really cool ability that can be very funny when activated. Another new EX. Yeah, we're not done yet. We got Bombirdier here. Fast Carrier. If you go first, you can use this attack on your first turn. Search check for up to 3 basic Pokemon and put them on your bench. The big thing with this attack is it's basically like a battle VIP effect. I actually don't think it's that bad. I think some people are saying that it's pretty good. I don't think it's like great. It's not bad though. It's like basically just plain squawkabilly. It's a little bit more specific though, where you actually have to get it in the active and have an energy on it, right? Though if you do have it in play, you can Shadowy Wind it off the board, does 130, and then you can shuffle it into your deck. So there you go. Skim through the rest here. We do have a new Iron Jugulis as the last Pokemon to look at here. It is your boy Hydreigon, my favorite Pokemon. It does have 2 attacks. I think the main attack, Homing Headbutt, does 50 damage to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon, 30 of damage counters on them. Now, I can see this being good against Lost Box, where if you play it in like Lugia, and they go Dragonite, right? They Dragonite you, they put a bunch of damage on all their bench Pokemon. You can hit with an Iron Jugulis, and then you can knock out a bunch of Comfies and stuff out of nowhere. That could be pretty hilarious. I actually think this could be good against Lost Box specifically. It is also like an okay spread attack in general. It's just Manaphy does prevent it from doing much, right? But it does have the other attack, Baryon Beam, where if you do have the future Boost Energy capsule on it, this attack only needs 3 colorless energy, which is a little bit cheaper to work with, right? So there you go. Getting to the items now, we got Ancient Booster Energy Capsule, the big tool card that does work with Ancient Pokemon. And when it's attached to an Ancient Pokemon, it gets plus 60 HP, which is pretty insane. And then you recover all special conditions. Not crazy, but 6 HP is pretty bananas. Again, combine that with the Ancient Pokemon like Sandy Shocks or Roaring Moon. It's a pretty good tool card. Another card coming back is Counter Catcher. You can only play this card when you have more prizes left than your opponent. You can switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. Boss's Order when you're behind in prizes on item card is bananas. This card is a great card to have in the game. Another card that's going to shake the format up, kind of like Iono did. Not every deck will play it. Like hyper-aggressive decks, like Lugia and Arcpiles and Miraidon, probably won't play this. But slower decks like Guardy, maybe even Lost Box, they will probably play this card. So I definitely think it's a very nice card to have in the game. It is a boss order. Being able to like Gust and Iono on the same turn is kind of what makes this card very powerful. Also, very good for control decks, too. Keep in mind, right? Because control doesn't take prizes. New Curse Duster tool card. If the Pokemon's card's tattoo is knocked out by damage from an attack, from your opponent's Pokemon, discard a random card from their hand. You can play with the new Gourgeist that's coming out, discard 3 cards, which is kind of cool, actually, but I don't think it's the greatest tool card ever. New Defiance Fest is also kind of sick. It's got the effect where if you have more prizes remaining than your opponent, the Pokemon this card is attached to takes 40 less damage from attacks. Now, this is not a bad tool to have. You do have to be behind in prizes for it to work, but it is a cool effect. Taking 40 less damage is very, very relevant. It gives you a lot more bulk. This could be definitely a good tool card to play, and I think that it will see some bit of play, in my opinion. It's not bad at all. That extra bulk can actually save you and make kind of a difference in a match. Another very strong new card in the set is Earthen Vessel. Very good in the Iron Hands Shenpao deck that everyone's freaking out about. You must discard a card from your hand in order to use this card, search deck for up to 2 basic energy, and put them in your hand. You can play this with a lot of different decks. Any deck that needs energy, obviously Gholdengo EX, Iron Hands. Iron Hands Lugia could play this, where you can use this to get rid of Archeops early on, or you can use it to get light energy, attach lightning energy to Iron Hands, and then Archeops energy onto it. So, pretty powerful card. I think it's one of the stronger new cards in the set. Definitely a card you want to get a playset of if you can. Another tool here, we got the Future Booster Energy Capsule to look at here, where the future Pokemon this card is attached to has no retreat cost, and its attacks do 20 more damage to your opponent's active. So, if you put this on Iron Hands, it has no retreat, and the thing already had a 4 retreat cost. And then, it does 140 damage instead of 120, which is a little bit more relevant damage. Of course, you're one-shotting Shining Arcana. The big thing is you are also one-shotting Pidgeot EX, which is just nasty. This card is very, very powerful with Iron Hands specifically. New supporter, Larry. Flip a coin of head. Search deck for up to 2 Pokemon. Put them in your hand. If tail, search deck for a basic Pokemon. Nothing crazy. I don't think Larry is that good. It is kind of hilarious, though. Another tool, we got Luxurious Cape. Pretty cool with 1 prize stacks. If the Pokemon this card is attached to does not have a rule box, it gets plus 100 HP. And when it gets knocked out by damage from your opponent's attacks, your opponent takes 1 more prize for doing so. Very strong tool. You can combine this with big, bulky Pokemon like Snorlax, Steelix, the one we just looked at, and even something like Torterra, something that has a lot of HP. There's Wailord too, another one that comes to mind. Really cool tool card. Giving up 1 extra prize is going to be annoying, but with the extra HP boost, that might honestly be okay. We'll have to see. Mella's not a bad card for fire decks. Attach 1 fire energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. If you do, draw cards until you have 6 in your hand. You can only use it, though, when one of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Very specific on that front, but a very strong effect nonetheless. And it's nice to have Energy Excel for fire Pokemon. Could be good with Armarouge EX, right? So, new Norman supporter. Again, nothing crazy. Draw 2 cards. If your opponent's active as an EX, you draw 2 more cards. I mean, could be good to play in Tinkaton, and that's probably going to be about it. Parasol Lady, shuffle your hand in your deck, draw 4 cards. If you go second, and your first turn, you can draw cards. You have 8 instead. I don't think Parasol Lady will be that playable. Even though the effect is very strong, you have to specifically find her. I mean, I guess you can play Lumineon for her, but I just don't think it's worth playing Parasol Lady. Now, another very strong new card is Sada's Vitality. This is what makes Ancient Pokemon pretty good, because you can choose up to 2 of your Ancient Pokemon, attach 1 basic energy you find there from discard pile to each of them, and then draw 3 cards. That's kind of crazy. Choosing 2 Pokemon to put energy on, and also being able to draw 3 cards from it is definitely extremely powerful. Energy Excel in a supporter is obviously going to be strong. It's basically like Melanie for Ancient Pokemon, and I think it's very good. Definitely good with Sandy Shocks and Roaring Moon. Future Pokemon did also get their own unique supporter, though, with Professor Turo Scenario. Put 1 of your Pokemon into your hand, discard all cards attached to that Pokemon. I'm not a fan of these type of cards. It's very similar to like AZ and Acerola. Very strong with something like Iron Valiant. Maybe not so much Iron Hands, but this card is also general, right? You can use it with any Pokemon, not just future Pokemon, right? It's not like Ancients with Sada's Vitality. So that's what makes this card kind of scary. There's a lot of cards that could abuse the effect of this, and it's just being able to heal something for free like that. It's just not. I'm not a fan, man. I'm not a fan. Got a new supporter with Rika. Look at the top 4 cards of your deck, put 2 of them in your hand, and then shuffle the other cards at the bottom of the deck. So it's just a worst closest experiment, basically. Not very playable. Rourke, draw 2 cards. Put a basic energy from discard pile in your hand. You could play this with Gholdengo, but I don't think Rourke is very playable either. This is the only deck that would probably play it right is Gholdengo. Maybe Shenpao, but maybe Shenpao. I doubt it, though. Chantel, flip a coin if head. Switch in 1 of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. If tails, switch your active Pokemon with 1 of your bench Pokemon. Nothing too crazy. Not a great supporter. New Snorlax doll is also kind of interesting. Now, you can only play it if you have it in your hand. You can play it as a at the start of the game anyways, right? You can play it as a face-down Pokemon, as a color-based Pokemon that has 120 HP. Now, that's about it. Your opponent can't take any prizes for knocking it out or anything, which is also pretty strong, but I don't think the Snorlax doll is that good. Nothing too crazy to write home about, basically, right? The fact that you have to start with it is what makes it not very playable. It's not worth it to play 4 of them. It just kind of clogs up your deck, in my opinion. At that point, just play Battle VIP, right? New technical machine, Blindside. When you play it, you have to discard at the end of your turn, but it does give your Pokemon the attack Blindside that does 100 damage to 1 of your opponent's Pokemon with any damage on it. That's a pretty strong effect. Now, Manaphy can stop it, but still, if there's no Manaphy in play, you can decide something for a knock-it at the end of the game. The big one that everyone's scared of is the Devolution one, which, for 1 energy, de-evolves all of your opponent's Pokemon in play by removing the highest stage evolution and putting it back in their hand. So against like Charizard EX, for example, if their opponent has like 2 Zars and a Pidgeot in play, you de-evolve them, and the Charizard and Pidgeot all have 60 damage on each of them. You knock out the Pidgeys and the Charmanders, and then You only get one prize for doing so, but you do get to immediately knock stuff out. This kind of is a step backwards for evolution-based decks, so not a fan of it. But I don't know how good it'll be right away. It's not as bad as Iron Hands to like gatekeep single prize stuff, but it is going to gatekeep some of the evolution-based decks, which is unfortunate. The evolution technical machine ain't bad though, where you can, I think it's like evolve each of your Pokemon on the bench by putting like, yeah, you can evolve each of your Pokemon on the bench. So if you have a bunch of one prize in play, you can put like the stage 1 versions onto them, which is kind of cool. We got Energize here. Search check for up to 2 base energy and attach them to your bench Pokemon you really like. Not bad either to set up your Pokemon, but it doesn't do damage, which is like the downside. But yeah, the new technical machines are cool. I definitely think that the Devolution one is a little annoying and not great for the game, but we'll have to see if this card ends up making an impact. Let me know what you think of Devolution down below. Techno Radar is really strong for future decks. Discard a card from your hand to use this card. Search check for up to 2 future cards and put them in your hand. That is crazy, bro. Being able to get like 2 Iron Hands, 2 Iron Valiants and something specifically makes this card kind of crack. This is definitely a very strong new item card that will most likely see quite a bit of play in future decks for sure. And when we get more future Pokemon, definitely could get even deadlier. Tulip here, put up the 4 of any combination of Psychic Pokemon and basic Psychic Energy from your discard pile in your hand. You can play this with that new Athrafa, but Tulip isn't great. It's just basically like a worse Clara. Like, I guess you could play it in like Xatu or Gardevoir, but I don't know. I mean, I guess it is better than Clara because you do get 4 energy back as opposed to 2. Maybe it is good. I don't know. It's okay, I guess. And the last card in the set to look at is Medical Energy. It is special energy, so you could play this in Lugia. When you attach it from your hand to one of your Pokemon, heal 30 damage from it. So it could be good in Lugia, where, like, say your opponent crams you, you can attach, like, the Pokemon and then heal 30, and that could fix the math for, like, Sableye or something, or Raikou or Dragonite. Just cool little card. Nothing crazy. I don't think Lugia will play it, but maybe it will. You never know. And then that's the set. That's every single card within the set. We have all the secret rares and stuff, but that is the entirety of the new set, Paradox Rift. This set does have a lot of game-changing cards. Let me know what you think of them down below. Do you think Iron Hands is good or bad for the game? Do you think Evolution is? Iron Valiant, stuff like that. What do you think of this set? I think it's going to change up the format quite a bit, which I think we desperately needed because, man, we've been living in the same format for a while now, and it's nice to have a bit of a shake-up here with Paradox Rift. But yeah, that'll be for me here on the second channel. Yeah, I'll be in Toronto this weekend. This video should be going up day 1 of Toronto Regional, so hope to see some of y'all there, and I'll see you on another video. Bye-bye.